Hey everybody, it's Katrina Russell again, and I hope you're staying safe and healthy. Um, this is going to be a short one because my kid's going to come out of karate any second. But I had an interesting Facebook conversation with a friend of mine because, as I said, I don't bother to talk to strangers anymore. It's not worth, unless it's like a friend of a friend who pops in on a link. But this is a friend of mine, and it was about the low-income housing being I don't know, Trump trying to stop low-income housing, which I talked about it on another video, so if you want to go check that out. But I don't agree with trying to stop low-income. Again, I have to do more research into it, but him saying that he's going to try to make less low-income housing in suburban areas, I don't agree with that. I think that low-income housing is great as long as people respect the housing. I mean, getting people we lived in low-income housing for a while. I've had friends who lived in low-income housing. I think it's very important. It helps people get into better school systems and what have you. So the friend of mine who posted it made a comment about it being racial, and I was like, well, I don't know that it's racial because there's way more white people taking advantage of like welfare systems, which includes the low-income housing, than black people. I said, although 20% of black people are considered, under the poverty line, so that means 80% are middle class, meaning lower middle class to upper middle class, but they're in that middle class because it's like $26,000 for a family of four. It's considered low poverty, and then like 30,000 is considered lower middle class. So there's like a few thousand in between. That's like something, I don't know. But I also know that because I had to be on WIC when my son was small because I had to quit my job because it was a big mess. But I never knew to watch my kid, and it was crazy. So, and so I remember being like, wow. Like my son's father had to move out. You'll see in other videos he was an addict, and I had to just boot him. So no one to watch my kid. My kid was an addict. I mean, my kid wasn't. His father was an addict, and I tried to breastfeed and was not able to. I do not have enough ducts. So there you go. My duct work does not work. So anyways, so I needed formula. It was seriously expensive, and so I went on WIC. And I remember filling out the financial information form, and again, I think I was working slightly part-time, and my son's father was on disability, and so I had that money, and so there was a little bit of, something. And I remember being like, mind you, slightly part-time. I think I was doing like night, like my dad would watch my son for a little while I could do some telemarketing. So it was like maybe 20 hours a week. And so I was making like, I don't know, like $12,000 a year or something crazy like that. So I qualified. But I remember thinking if I was married to my son's father, because obviously we didn't stay together because of his addiction, he was on disability and he made like, I don't know, $1,200 a month or something on disability, that we would have been overqualified for WIC. So I remember that. So I remember that there's like these certain rules that go into, you have to be under this poverty line in order to get anything. So I had said that although 20% of blacks are under the poverty line and only 8% of whites are under the poverty line, way more whites live in poverty than blacks. And she was like, where do you get this information? And that's not true, and blah, 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 blah. And I was like, well, no, it is. And I showed her the statistics, linked the website to the Bureau of Statistics thing. And she's like, but still, so that means for every, white person, since only 8%, that means like 2 point whatever black people are on. And I was like, live in poverty. I'm like, well, no, because there's only 13% of the population is black and 70% of the population is white. So it was like, I did the math, don't have it in front of me, but it was like, so 8 point something million blacks live in poverty. And it was like 200 million whites live in poverty, which is more. And she's like, but even still, so that doesn't count people, like, just because it's not above the poverty, below the poverty line, that doesn't mean that there's not people who, I'm like, well, that's what we're talking about. We're talking about people who qualify for housing. And so unless there's extenuating circumstances, it's pretty much you have to be below the poverty line to qualify for most of these welfare type services. And it's like she couldn't, I just kind of left it because she couldn't hear. She's like, well, that doesn't count to anything because there's other people who, are still could possibly qualify depending on how many kids and depending on how many this. And I'm like, well, yeah, that, of course, there's outlying differences, but these are the basic statistics. But she wanted to make it so that there was more black people that were poor in the country. Now, mind you, statistically, there are more there's a bigger percentage of black people that are poor, which I do think we need to work on. I think we need to figure out, in general, as society, how to bring everybody out of poverty. But it's like, people don't want to hear facts. They like their narrative. They like, I don't even think, it's like they've been brainwashed. And I've heard Democrats say it. I think it was even Biden who said, poor kids are just as smart as white kids. It's like, well, 200 million families, mind you, this is families, this is not people, so this is families. 200 million white families are poor. So there's a lot of poor kids that are white. That's a stupid analogy. Stupid. And then I've heard people talk about how white people have inherited wealth. Sure, some do. And on average, more white people have inherited wealth than black people. Absolutely true. But not all white people, and not no black people. And I think we have to stop talking about things like all white people are rich and all poor people are all black people are poor, because that's not the case. And I think as soon as we stop to label things like that, it's going to help with the hatred that's out there that literally poor white people are not better off than rich black people. Sorry, not. When I was a kid and I was living in my mother's Volkswagen Pinto because she was schizophrenic, I was not better off than the black kid living in a condo or a house in the suburbs. Sorry, not. And I'm not trying to pity party myself because my dad started his own business, got custody and started his own business and did very well, and I had a lovely life, and that's fine. But separating races the same as economic status is causing problems. And when I pointed it out, she ended up changing her I don't know, description at the top, being more about class than race, which I appreciated. But she still couldn't fathom that there's more poor white people in general than there were poor black people, because it's not portrayed in any societal norm as that. And I think that's causing a lot of, we need to start looking at reality, facts, not movies and just crap democratic policies that say, well, if you're black, what is it? If you don't vote for me, you're not black because we have welfare and you're going to need welfare. Like, no, shut up. That's racist. All right. So that's all I wanted to say. My kid's going to be out of karate pretty soon. So like, share, subscribe, do all that good stuff at the bottom, and have a good day.